shonen. This video marks the beginning of documenting my journey creating a 2D, hand-drawn, animated short film. I'm Zhao the artist, and this film will be a tribute to a creator who goes by the name of Tonikos. I choose this subject for a myriad of reasons, which we can actually talk about right now. Starting off strong, I want to lean into the looser style, particularly the ones in his Snoot Bros playlist over here. I think this sort of project is a perfect fit for where I am now in my journey as a filmmaker. Creating a short film with multiple shots that all connect together. Something further than an animation test consisting of just a single scene, but still easier than a more demanding style. Not to say this will be a walk in the park by any means. Well, Tonikos may call these shorts his quote-unquote stupid skits. They're actually really well drawn and very clearly made by someone who knows what they're doing. Link in the description, by the way, you should watch all of them. They're really, really funny. Continuing at this from a different angle, these shorts have an underlying, very strong inspirational theme to them, which I wasn't fully aware of until I went back to study the shorts more closely. For example, he said, quote, "Yeah, you know what, screw it, I'll just play the clip for you."
I wanted to show you guys this because a short film can be anything. But more importantly, you don't need to make something deep, evocative to make a short film. You don't even need to have a crazy budget to make a short film, or a production schedule, or production value. Try making something short with a very tight deadline, maybe in a day or maybe a week at most. It could be a stupid joke or something similar to a YouTube poop. So be open to making a lot of crap. And the most important thing here is to have fun with it. Make yourself laugh and stop worrying about trying to prove others. Would I want to make more? Absolutely. But one step at a time. I'm working on a few projects that need my attention first. Anyways, that's all. Bye.
And in the description of, "Show me your sketchbook, bro," Tonikos even wrote, quote, "If you want to dub it into another language or do your own take, let me know." Given this context, I feel like ripping off this style and doing my own take is something that should be well received, at least by the person who I'm paying tribute to. Which might not always be the case, but you do you, man. So yeah, I'm going to be doing my own take with all cats instead of dogs, since inspiring people to make films, and more broadly art in general, is also a message I would like to send out into the world. This project is also in a way saying thank you and paying respects to Tonikos for inspiring me and teaching me through his videos. He has shared a massive amount of information, both of his personal experience in his art life and practice, and his professional experiences working for companies like Netflix and DreamWorks. All for free on his YouTube channel, which I think is a very kind thing to do. Alright, this project will be A, substantial enough to be a short film without crashing out too heavy, giving me a more obtainable goal to start with. B, hopefully an inspirational message, both by the fact that I will be making it almost entirely by myself, but also the fact that I will be walking you through each step of my process in this video and future videos as the project progresses. And C, should serve as a tribute as well as a thank you to someone whose videos have reached me in a very meaningful way. Everything coming full circle, baby! Alright, cool, great, beautiful. What the fuck did I actually do to start this project? Like, for real. Pen to paper, no bullshit, what happened? Very good questions, my friend. Going in chronological order, I first began with writing down my idea. Well, I had randomly thought about doing some variation on a Tonikos-inspired film and what jokes that might entail for a few months now. Writing down the idea in a document was the first step in making my plans concrete. Nailing down the idea so it would be substantial enough to function as a guideline for what I would want to achieve moving forward. I can actually read to you exactly what I wrote in the document to summarize my idea and also serve as a guideline for this project. Embrace the looser style of Tonikos' comedy skits to create a short film with multiple shots that tell a story. Further than an animation test consisting of a single scene, but easier than studio level quality or a more ambitious project. Also, in a way, thanking and paying respects to Tonikos for inspiring me and teaching me. Some other points that I didn't write down but were still prevalent bouncing around in my mind are, I wanted to flip the style of dogs who are all dudes to be all cats who are all girls. Sort of, but not quite the same as inverting the colors. The largest source of inspiration comes from the "show me your sketchbook, bro" short. Since going I can't say that with a straight face. Since going with a coffee shop location gives me the opportunity to parody Starbucks. And those kinds of coffee shops are just such an absolute mood. As well as the fact that I think this whole process of reflection and giving thought to what you want to set out to do is a really important step in the creative process before you go out and spend a bunch of time and work, and potentially money too, chasing a specific result. Okay, now I had nailed down what I wanted to do. It was time to study up and make some preparations. After all, in order to properly make a tribute film, one must be familiar with the material you wish to pay tribute to. I rewatched the various shorts with a new intent to study the components and techniques used to create them. It's interesting to go back and rewatch something for the specific expressed purpose of deconstructing the style. For example, here are some insights I found out upon these closer examinations, most of which completely went over my head the first time viewing. So I went back to check if Tonikos had music or any kind of soundscapes or kind of background noises in the videos, and he actually does. For example, in the "show me your sketchbook, bro," he has a bunch of ambience in the background for the coffee shop and some nature sounds that I just didn't even pick up on, but they are there.
Hey there, my little yellow bro. You cafe sketching? Nice. Good effort. Kinda cute. But here, let me show you my sketchbook. I'm thinking about form, gesture, and construction. Don't forget line clarity. What are you doing?
And this is on top of the music that I did pick up on, which was the intro and outro. But yeah, there's a good bit of sound design in between, not just sound effects, but also ambient sound. There was way more referential humor than I first thought. Another thing I observed was a few of the characters, or maybe even half of them, were original characters he already had drawn. Because you see, Tonikos actually did a bunch of short animations of dogs dancing over live action footage. And so he just took some of those designs, and when he decided to do skits, he was able to reuse a lot of those characters, which I had not taken note of until now. As far as the runtime of the skits, I observed they are all under 3 minutes individually, not counting the first one, which is a compilation, so I still consider that under 3 minutes, because they're under 3 minutes individually. Not much more to this, but I do find it interesting that they all conform to this pattern. God fucking damn it. Okay, goddamn it. Okay, so he uploaded a new one, and it's 3 minutes and 34 seconds, which means my statement that they were all under 3 minutes is completely ruined, which is an L. But on the other hand, I get another skit from Tonikos, which was really fucking funny. So, I mean, you know, you win some, you lose some. Something I noticed when I went back to study and really think more deeply about these, there's a lot of life experience and the shocking level of, like, relatability and accuracy to more personal experiences for artists usually, which is very interesting because they're very lighthearted and they are very funny, but there's usually a very heartfelt and relatable aspect to it, which reflects a lot of people's life experience to a pretty shocking degree. There's a lot of limited animation. I might have picked up on this earlier, but there's techniques used, like for example right here, where the character's mouth is moving, so there's lip sync, and his face is changing, but those aren't actually new frames being drawn, it's just the face being warped back and forth, which is a little bit easier. So there's a lot of small things that save time. Speaking of things that probably made Tonikos' life easier, the background paintings are simple, but very effective. They have this very painterly, almost quickly put together feel, which I think it has a charm to it. I quite like it. But it definitely looks easier to make than, like, say, photorealism or paintings that are very difficult and highly detailed and meticulous. And last but not least, the skits are almost always, not always, but almost always, at least a bit suggestive. Moving on to the next step, I studied storyboarding. Most of this information I got was from binging about 3 movies runtime worth of videos on how to storyboards in a course I got. The specific course was Getting Started by Howard Wimshurst on animatorguild.com. I'll put links in the description if anyone is interested. The basic gist of what I learned was to apply film knowledge, learning different types of shots, shot composition, etc., and applying these skills that are traditionally associated with live action film into your animations. One of the most basic ways you can do this is with one of the most basic rules in film, known as the 180-degree rule, which I will actually explain to you right now. The 180-degree rule in film refers to when you have two or more subjects in a given scene. So, for example, let's say Kid Goku over here is talking to Obito Uchiha, and we're gonna have both of these subjects in our scene. So, we're gonna draw an imaginary line between them, portrayed by this Sakura Micron 03 pen. And the 180-degree rule represents the 180 degrees on one side of this line. So to follow the rule, you would have all of your cameras on one side of the line. So for example, let's pretend that these eagles with big ass guns, no, not those kind, are our cameras. So all of them will have a certain consistency to them. So for example, this one that's quite far away might look something like this, with Obito closer on the right and Kid Goku farther on the left. The one in the middle might have a more balanced composition, with both of them kind of equally there. And the one on the far left would have something close to a over-the-shoulder view of Kid Goku looking at Obito far away. So if we were to break the rule by cutting and going over here, that might look something like this. And this would be very disorienting because Obito would now be on the left side and Kid Goku would be on the right. And because keep in mind, this is now our perspective. We're not looking at it from here, we're looking at it from the camera. And in that case, it would look like he teleported, and that would be weird and disorienting, which if you want to break the rule, sure, go for it. I could think of two examples where this might be very applicable. Perhaps your character is in New York City for the first time, and they're really fucking lost, and you want to convey some of that lostness and the struggle to figure out where you're going to your audience. Or if they were in any sort of maze or really difficult to navigate situation, then that would make sense. You're trying to disorient the audience and put them in that uncomfortable spot that your characters experiences so they empathize with them. But generally, you don't want that. You want cohesion and immersion so people can get into the story you're telling, not be confused about why characters are jumping out around the screen. Now, if you were to bend the rule, that's different. So note that this only applies to cutting. So let's take this, again, the same camera angle. We're going to do almost the same thing, but it will be an exception. So if we had a continuous shot that started on one end of the line and then went around and then ends up on the other end, that's okay because you took the audience along for the journey with you. So it only applies to cutting, and you could also do something like a neutral scene, like if you panned away and then panned back and you're on the other side, that would be fine. One last thing to note that is interesting about this is, let's say we do like an extreme close-up. Extreme close-up! Obito will be looking screen left towards Goku. Then we're going to have an extreme close-up of Goku. Goku will be looking screen right, still at Obito. So even if only one of the characters is present in the shot, it will still have that cohesive feeling of right to left or left to right motion, which your audience will pick up on. And the actual last thing to note is that if you had more, like let's say let's bring in this little black cat sprout goober. If you had more than two subjects, you do the same thing, you just draw the line, you just stay on one side of them. Like for example, we could stay on this side, this 180 degrees, or we could go over here and we could be on this back 180 degrees. Congrats, you know the 180 degree rule. After learning about storyboarding a fair bit more, I went straight into planning things out on paper, full old school. Until I didn't, because after an hour or so I decided I didn't want to redraw a lot of stuff on paper using pens and ink, and I would rather just do it on my tablet. With that little detour concluded, I made these little things, which are very rough storyboards showing the sequence of all the events that happen in my film. These boards are very, very loosely drawn, and that is on purpose. This step is for mainly two reasons. To, one, let me experiment and sort of get the visual aspect of thinking, actually putting something down on paper, which is very different than just imagining it only in your head. But also for me to estimate and sort of get a feel for the scope and scale of the project, things such as the total number of shots in the film. I'm not going to go in depth about the sketchy storyboards in this video because I actually want to talk about it later in my process after I've gone in with another pass, sort of making the final layout and proper storyboards, actually nailing down where every character will be, what the backgrounds will look like, maybe even camera movements, and even things like a full written script to pin down the exact dialogue characters will be saying. So stay tuned for that, because I will be breaking all of this down, just not right this second. You could also say they are quote-unquote thumbnails, but that's kind of subjective, since thumbnails are just storyboards that are drawn at a really, really small size with not a lot of detail. Aside from that, they're really not that different. Note that I do not have proper character designs yet. While I can kind of imagine what everyone might look like, since I have thought about this for a while now, certain technical details such as how tall the characters are in relation to one another, as well as their exact clothes and color palettes, are still undecided. Speaking of characters, it was around this point when I realized Tonikos had at least half of the character designs made at the time he made these shorts. Speaking of these little guys, did you know all these motherfuckers have names? But like seriously, I've been missing out on the lore up until now. Even if their name doesn't come up in the shorts, they still have one, which I think is really fun. With all that said, I do not have any character designs to reuse for this project, so I better hop to it and start making some character designs. The way I went about designing these characters is roughly as follows. I come up with their general demeanor and vibe, as well as what their role in the story will be. Then I find reference photos of various cats, deciding on what specific real-life breed of cat each character will be. This helps guide me when making specific decisions like what the ears will look like or any fur patterns, and it really helps for differentiating the cats from one another and making sure they all look unique and interesting. Additionally, I window shop for clothes, since realtors and even online shops have almost endless pieces of apparel on models with pictures from many different angles. And guess what? That's exactly the kind of information that helps you draw the clothes on your characters. Once I had gathered a substantial amount of information and reference for my character, I throw everything into PureRef, organize it into a mood board, and then start drawing. I went straight into doing turnarounds or model sheets, but drawing your characters in a scene or interacting with each other is a great place to start from if you're still trying to get a feel for your characters. While doing model sheets like these, it's really important to maintain consistency, since you will be referencing these exact images later for animation. Two techniques I found helpful in achieving this consistency were, one, having these lines across the page here at the feet, hips, shoulders, and the top of the head, not included the ears. And two, drawing one illustration, then when sketching the next illustration, I would actually draw over the first illustration, using it as a reference to ensure all the proportions are the same, or at least as close as I can get. Exactly like this. So far as giving proper names to the characters, I tried to make them have some form of literal meaning describing the character, or at the very least be referential humor. For example, Sapphire is named that for her fiery personality. Neo is for Neapolitan, as in the ice cream flavor, and also the Ruby character. Chloe, who is named after someone I was online friends with briefly on chess.com, which I would always read the name wrong for some reason. This was many years ago, mind you. And because of that, the name now has significance to me because it was something I learned. There's also Belladorn, who you might think is a Twilight reference, but joke's on you, motherfucker, because Bella isn't a Twilight reference, even though she is wearing a t-shirt that has a reference to a property with werewolves. It's actually a reference to Blake Belladonna from Red, White, Black, and Yellow, because Belladorin kind of sounds like Belladonna. Oh no. I'll let you decide if I gave her that name just so I can make that joke. Oh, there's also the unnamed barista, who's an employee at the coffee shop, and then there's Josh. No further explanation. What more can I say? He's a Josh. You know, now that I think about it, only one of these names are literal. Anyways, it is now that I would like to share with you a resource that has been quite helpful for me starting this project. The resource is a PDF by Howard Wimshurst called the Animator's Checklist. Whether you want to use it as a literal checklist of things you will do while working on your film, or alternatively, you could use it more as inspiration for more actions to take if you're feeling stuck, or that a scene isn't meeting the quality that you were hoping for. Regardless of which you choose, I found it very helpful, and if you're thinking about undertaking an animated project, I think you might find it helpful too. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. You can get it for free by signing up for his newsletter. I suppose if you want to be mean, you can download it after you subscribe and then unsubscribe right afterwards. But if you want to be super cool, you could stay subscribed, since I could confirm he doesn't abuse it with unnecessary emails, and it's been quite nice. To close out here, I'd like to go a bit meta and share a little something for anyone who may be interested in making videos documenting their process like I am doing right now. Now, I was originally going to say you should document in segments, basically working on the project up until a certain point you decided, then stopping and focusing solely on documentation. Sort of like climbing a ladder. Each arm never goes so far that it's hard for the other to catch up. But after reflecting a bit more, I think it's much more nuanced than that. I can definitely see some pros and cons to a document as you go approach, such as it is much easier to remember what you did just last week and talk about it while it's still fresh in your mind. Well, fresh comparatively to months or even potentially years after completion, depending on the type of project you're setting out to do and later document. Documenting as you go also offers the unique perspective of someone who is genuinely in the middle of the creative process, which you don't quite get in proper retrospectives done completely after the fact. On the other hand, I could see how this method of switching focus between the project and the project's documentation could really take you out of the thing you actually want to work on in the first place, possibly stalling the momentum you had built up and slowing things down a lot. There's also just an elegance to a proper retrospective that takes you from the beginning of a project to the end of it, all in one single piece of media. Not at all saying you can't tell a good story of how a project came to be in many parts. That would be very hypocritical of me, as I am literally documenting as I go in this video. But there is something to be said for having everything in one place. No, that's not a One Piece reference. But if you wish to make videos or any other form of media about your process, I definitely believe it's worth giving the choice some thought and considering which approach you think fits your documentation better. I'm sure I'll have more to say about this subject later, probably after I finish the film and all the documentation related to it, in which case I will have the experience of both documenting as I go, as well as creating a retrospective documentary entirely after the fact, which I have already done. You can watch that, by the way, if you want to, but I mean, you know. And if you haven't ever considered leveraging the process of your creative endeavors, you should read Austin Kleon's books. They are very fucking good. Last but not least, if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. It helps out the channel a lot. Also, I have a Project Lifecycle newsletter you can sign up for. Nothing crazy, and I definitely will not spam you. Only an email to notify you when a new project begins or ends. For example, the email to notify people that this project is beginning has already been sent out. And I'll send out an email when this short film is completed. So that's there for you or anyone else who might wish to ensure that they do not miss when the final film is live on my channel. As always, thank you for watching. Matane! I know that word. Yay!